Hi, my name is Mark Nedjma. I'm from Newsweed.com, and I'd like to read the news to you. Today, in Miami, the Chaplain Towers, 877 Collins Ave, collapsed. President Biden and Republicans seem to have agreed on a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. There were other questions asked of President Biden today, and he whispered that money would be sent to people for child care. I'm not understanding that very well. Let me give you some more detail on some of these stories. President Biden and a group of centrist senators agreed to roughly $1 trillion in infrastructure plans, carrying a long-sought bipartisan deal on overhauling the nation's transportation. If you recall, they were trying to pass a bill that really was not defined as infrastructure. Well, they are going to take on water, broadband infrastructure, that the lawmakers and the White House will now attempt to shepherd through a closely divided Capitol Hill. Quote, "We had a really good meeting, and the answer, the direct question, we have a deal," Mr. Biden told reporters at the White House. "We've all agreed that none of us got what we all would have wanted. I wish they would have not wasted so much time. I clearly did not get all I wanted. They gave more than I think, and they were maybe inclined to give in the first place," President Biden added. Drafts of the agreement has called for $575 billion of spending above expected federal levels, totaling $973 billion over 5 years and $1.2 trillion if continued over 8. Let's see if he's going to be in for 8. The lawmakers have discussed financing the package with a mix of public-private partnerships. Now that's pretty interesting, in which private industries get to kind of run the projects as opposed to the public sector. Blah, blah, blah. As far as the building collapse, the beachside building, as I said, was at 877 Collins Ave. It was called the Champlain Towers South and was built in 1981 according to city property records. There were about 136 units in the building according to the mayor. Based on the pictures that I saw, it looked like the building was a concrete structure supported by rebar and structural walls. If the building had collapsed like that, and since it collapsed at the point of an intersection with a supporting wall, my guess is that there was some leaking from the roof or just that the rebar had rusted away in critical spots. We'll have to see what the construction forensic people come up with, but that is Newsweed's opinion. Looking at the pictures, it looked like the building was not maintained on the exterior very well. So how many people were killed? At current, the police have confirmed 1 death. Governor Ron Desantis of Florida told reporters that officials were bracing for some bad news, but still hopeful to find and save survivors. They're doing everything they can to save lives, and the TV doesn't do justice to really what the damage is. It's really traumatic to see a collapse of a massive structure like that. About 35 people were rescued from the building and 2 pulled from the rubble. Ray Jadala, a Miami-Dade fire rescue assistant fire chief, said at the news conference. Officials have accounted for 53 people who lived in the building, but 99 people remain unaccounted for by mid-afternoon. Very sad. The area has a robust Jewish community and longtime ties to families of South America. Many Jewish and South American residents reported to be among the missing. Some controversial news out of Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis signed in HB 233 on Tuesday. The legislation will require public universities to survey students and staff annually about their beliefs to assess viewpoint diversity on campuses. The bill does not specifically say what will be done with the survey results, but DeSantis suggested that budget cuts could be imminent if universities and colleges are found to be indoctrinating students. Well, we already know that they're doing that, but at the same time, it seems that the governor is taking an approach here that just doesn't fit being fair. If you know what's happening, you could probably legislate a curriculum instead of legislating a survey that might make people answer improperly or start to hide their political beliefs. In America, that just should not be done. I like Governor Desantis, but it just doesn't make sense. Now, in other news, there have been quite a few findings recently of, I consider, a very questionable story. What the news is focusing on are several schools that were in the U.S. and Canada, and it seems like they're finding many mass graves from the 1920s. Whenever I see stories like this, I can never really understand them because they're making an assumption of what they know happened back in the 20s. But let me read you what's happening. An indigenous nation in Canada says it found 751 unmarked graves at the site of a former residential school in Saskatchewan. The Cowessess First Nation said the discovery was the most significant and substantial to date in Canada. It comes weeks after remains of 215 children were found at similar residential school in British Columbia. This is not a mass gravesite. They are unmarked graves, said Cowessess Chief Cadmus Delorme. The Marival Indian Residential School was operated by the Roman Catholic Church from 1899 to 1997 in the area where Cowessess is now located in southeastern Saskatchewan. It's not clear if the remains are linked to the school. Good point. It was one of more than 130 compulsory boarding schools funded by the Canadian government and run by religious authorities during the 19th and 20th centuries with the aim of assimilating Indigenous youth. Now that's an interesting curveball. Maybe they just didn't think that they could retrain these people and they figured they could get rid of them. Who's to say? But it's going to be an interesting, I guess, anthropological review or sociological review of what actually happened. But Canada is now mourning the 215 deaths of the children. Physical and sexual abuse at the hands of school authorities led others to run away. Last month, the Cowessess began to use groundbreaking penetrating radar to locate unmarked graves at the cemetery of the Marival Indian Residential School in Saskatchewan. Thursday's announcement marked the first phase of search efforts. Chief Delorme said that there may have been markers for the graves at one point, but that the Roman Catholic Church, which oversaw the cemetery, may have removed them. Or perhaps some landscaper was sloppy. I mean, it's a terrible story. You got to get to the real truth of this, but it seems as if they were really hurting children many years ago, and hopefully this will not be another stain on the Catholic Church. We'll have to really see. The Roman Catholic Church, which was responsible for the operations of up to 70% of residential schools, has not yet issued a formal apology. The May discovery of 215 children's remains at the site of a former residential school in Kamloops has thrown a spotlight on Canada's past policy of forced assimilation. Indigenous leaders expect similar findings as the search for grave sites continues, aided by new funding from federal and provincial governments. Murder is a serious, serious offense. Now, I don't know if what they could have done to these kids, but it's horrible. Well, as you know, it's never as it seems. But one thing that I can assure you is that Newsweed will be doing a segment each day called Music is News. And we have one of our own talents, Dave Salazzo. He'll be helping us with that as often as he can, but we think you'll enjoy it. He'll evaluate a news story and produce some music based on how it moves him or doesn't move him. So thanks for your time today at newsweed.com, and we hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you.